Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Rundown. Thank you so much to the Village Bakers Club from before the break. We're laughing here because you might remember they told us a story about how somebody entered their great village bake-off and they turned up with a shop bought sponge and just stuck two flakes in. Well, apparently it was Drew Tosh's.
It was meant to signify Stonehenge.
Have you been to Stonehenge?
No.
Have you seen it pictures?
It doesn't look a lot like a Cadbury's flake snapped in two, but it was. I turned up. I gave it a go.
It's all about the taking part.
They're cakeist.
It's all about the taking part, isn't it? Though, is that what we're trying to put across here?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I will be taking part this week because I'm being forced to.
Excellent.
It's a giggle. It's laugh, and there's so much stuff to eat. I mean, it's well worth going along and just sticking some money in the honesty bucket. You don't have to bake.
Yeah. That in itself is enough. That's incentive.
You won't have to
me,
eat for a week.
Have some cake. Yeah, they're saying in my ear. Yeah, it's all about eating cake. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Exactly.
You did your best.
Exactly. It was Tesco's finest.
Right.
Actually, it wasn't. It was the blue and white stripe. Now I think about it.
Right, okay, so we're at the part of the show where our guests can feel free to get something off their chests. I'm going to just completely hand over control. Is there something to say? Who's going first?
Oh, me?
Yeah,
Mr. David Semple.
Yours is more serious, so possibly it's best to start with the
serious.
Have we got a serious topic from you, Mr. David Semple?
Well, I think people's lives are serious, yes. It concerns Mr. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, and what he's doing in eastern Turkey. Because basically there is a small genocide of Kurdish people going on in Turkey at the moment, where they're murdering 50 or 60 people at a time. They're bombing Kurdish cities in the east. And he seems to be obsessed with a hatred of the Kurds. There was a peace at one point a couple of years ago between the PKK, the Kurdish terrorist group, and the Turkish government. And he brought that to an end, especially as they actually got into parliament at the last two elections, and that's frustrated him. And of course, he opposes the Kurdish independence movement in Syria, because the Kurdish are amongst those fighting ISIS, the most successful people fighting ISIS, the Iraqi Kurds and the Syrian Kurds, with a bit of help from the PKK. And he said to the Americans, actually, you have to choose between the Turkish and the Kurds. And that's a racist politics at its worst, because if you look at Turkey, in fact, it is a multinational state. It is not the state of the Turkish people. They speak Turkish, but most of their ethnic background, you've got it's about 20% Kurds, you've got Greeks, you've got Armenians, you have Georgians, all sorts of different nationalities. But since the rise of it was the Ottoman Empire a long time ago, but since the rise of Turkish nationalism in 1908, and a coup where a Turkish military people took over the government, I know that's going into detail, it seems to me that the Turkish nationalism seems to be rising again in the 21st century, because it was a secular state from 1924 when Turkey was actually formed. It used to be called Asia Minor, or Anatolia. It was actually one point called the Roman Empire, the Greek Roman Empire. But the Turks came in there in about the 11th century and they took over. They came from Asia themselves, and they were very successful soldiers throughout their history. And they conquered it. But when it was the Ottoman Empire, there was a degree of tolerance there when it was part of the Islamic Caliphate. And that tolerance seems to have been dying now, because it seems to be that Erdogan stands for Turkish supremacism. And that means the Kurdish being the most distinct group in the country, he has waged a war against them. He doesn't want an independent Kurdish state anywhere because he feels they're a threat to Turkey. But in fact, they're not a threat to Turkey, because the Kurdish PKK and all the Kurdish terrorist groups in Turkey never wanted to form an independent, separate state. They just wanted local autonomy and control of their own affairs. They're a bit left-wing, a bit communist, actually. Öcalan, their spiritual leader, the guy who's in prison, he's a communist, actually. And they've got a very left-wing views, and we're putting men and women as equals, and it's completely contradictory to the beliefs of Erdogan. And what he's provoking now, there was the coup d'etat, which never came off, and he's had a crackdown where he's arrested about 60,000 people. And he blames his former colleague, Gulen, another religious party guy, ran a bunch of thousands of religious schools in Turkey, for the problems that led to that coup. But in fact, he's just trying to become a dictator and a Turkish nationalist in a way that Turkish nationalism resembles Nazi German nationalism of the 1930s. And I think that's very, very bad, because he's provoking a civil war in Turkey, which could lead to it becoming another Syria. And I think the West has not been responsible enough or tough enough in dealing with Turkey to put it. I know he was democratically elected, but I think he's got to be put in his place. They're part of NATO. We have 50 nuclear bombs in Turkey, a place which is having a lot of terrorism at the moment. And this man, Erdogan, is completely out of control. He is not democratic. He is a dictator. He's abusing human rights within his own country, of Turkish people, of all sorts of people within the country. And how a country like that can be in the NATO alliance, I just do not understand. I think the West should be doing more about trying to put Turkey in its place. And I think, I know Turkey wanted to join the EU a moment as a democratic state. It is technically democratic, but in fact it is a fascist state. And so I wanted to get it out that Erdogan is, to me, the most dangerous man in Europe at the moment, because Turkey is part of Europe, the continent of Europe. It's on the borders between Europe and Asia. And he's playing a very disruptive role in international politics, because he's managed to upset all the former allies that Turkey had. He's been trying to get together with the Russians again after upsetting them. He upset the Israelis. He's tried to get back together with them. He doesn't get along with the Egyptians. He's certainly opposed to Assad in Syria, but it seems to me he's the troublemaker. And I'd hate to see Turkey turn into another Syria, but I feel that might happen.
If that was the situation, how do you think, what kind of effects will be felt throughout the rest of Europe then?
I think it would be disastrous, because this Asia Minor, which is called Turkey today, and they call Anatolia, is an important part of civilization. The city of Istanbul, which means, I think, like city by the sea in Greek or something like that, it used to be called Constantinople, is an important city in the history of European heritage. And it seems to me that we should be doing stuff to put some constraints on this man, even possibly arresting and prosecuting him, because he's overturning the concept. At the moment, he's got military powers, and he's behaving like the Greek dictators of the 1970s. And we just can't have people behaving like that on the borders of Europe. I mean, look at what's happened in Syria. We do not want that coming closer to Europe, because it will spill into Europe and create a lot of problems. So I see Erdogan as the most dangerous man, and I think the Kurdish people themselves have a lot of problems. They're not happy with their leader in Iraq, Barzani, who is actually mates with Erdogan, by the way. But when he said to the United States, you have to choose between the Kurdish and us, that was a mistake, because the Kurdish people are Turkish people too, and they're all one people, and he shouldn't be. They're part of the same nation. He shouldn't be telling the Americans to make that choice.
What kind of constraints would you think? I know you sort of said up to possible arrest, but obviously the rest of Europe can't just jump in.
Well, we can't go to war with Turkey, but I think we could eventually do sanctions again. I mean, they've lost the tourism industry, much of it now, especially with this coup going on in Turkey.
I think we were actually talking about that, weren't we? How the tourism, I don't know if you were on the show, but tourism has been drastically obviously affected in Turkey. I mean, people just don't feel safe going there, I don't think. Would you go on a holiday to Turkey, Drew?
Probably not.
Have you been?
I haven't been. I tend to shy away from really hot places now. I think it's an age thing.
Oh, protecting your skin.
Well, yeah, you have to. John Collins says never go out with that hat on.
Yeah.
And she's 112. But it's just, I probably wouldn't. I hate the fact that I wouldn't because of that reason. because I think you shouldn't
blame people, can you?
You shouldn't stop what you want to do just because of these things, because in a way that means that's a little victory to them. But yeah, it probably would make you think twice. Yeah.
But I mean, Turkey rely on their tourism industry.
Very much on
their income.
Yeah, it relies on it. It's got a lot of the suits they make in Turkey are excellent. The clothes, they're very good at that. They do a lot of things well, but they very much rely on their tourism industry. So do we, and it's important. I mean, it's one of the historically significant pieces of land in the world because it's the home to several civilizations: the original Roman Empire, the parts of the Persian Empire, the Byzantine, Greek, Roman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire, all of which are of historical significance. And those should be that's one of the major places in the world that people should want to go to. Turkey. People who are into historical stuff, not just going to the beach, but if you want beaches or the sea,
it's there.
Turkey's on the Mediterranean.
But obviously the safety isn't felt.
It's not felt at the moment. And there's a lot of people in Turkey. They say 50% of the nation back, saying, yeah, there's a lot of uneducated people, peasants, and he gets the peasant vote out in the villages.
Sounds like Trump.
Make a comparison. And there are people I know people who are conservatives, who are socialists, who are liberals, who oppose, because they want to live in a free and democratic country. And there's no reason why they shouldn't want to. It's a well-educated country. There's a lot of Turkish people living in this country. In London and Hackney, a lot of Kurdish people too. And it seems to me that Turkey isn't too important a country to let it go to the dogs, which is what's been happening since he came to power.
Thanks very much for that, David. You've something to say. We're going to go for a break. When we come back, we'll have Drew's something to say and finally. So don't miss any of that. We'll see you soon.